Thanks. Well, welcome. Welcome, everyone. Happy that you're here. Let me grab my notes for just a moment, but delighted everyone's here, and you're going to hear from Seth in just a minute. Seth, thanks for coming today. Thank you. So, this won't take more than a couple hours to get through this.
Don't you tell everybody about the dress code. Sure.
I will. No, that's just a little pin somebody gave me. So, but I just wanted to say good afternoon and thanks for coming. Pick up your hand in the back room if you can't hear me at any time, please. My name is George Horn, and on behalf of myself, my wife Linda, Mary and Byron Williams, and Rory and Mom McCarthy, we appreciate you all being here. I think it's pretty significant that we have 3 teachers and the 3 females that I just mentioned, the 3 women who've all been school teachers, and all three of us, Byron and Rory and myself, are veterans. And I think that has a lot to do with why we support Seth. This is an independent that we have running for us, which is marvelous. We know our 2-party system is struggling. It's got some real problems. It does. And so it is so refreshing and wonderful and vital to our country that we have an independent who will step up and, when elected, is not beholden to the powers that be. Because we will be the people that elected. Now, again, I want to introduce Seth, and I want to go through a few things about Seth that you may or may not know that I think are important. But before I do that, it occurs to me that I'm going to have to put on my glasses to do that. And it's a good thing. You know, it's a bad thing. It's sort of like when I get a microphone, I pretend I'm in front of a jury, and I'll try not to do that in my years. So, but Seth's bio is outstanding. He is a Green Beret, or was. He's been a business leader, a former president, as we know, of the University of Montana. We have a cat and Grizz in our family, so that's sort of mixed, but I'm sure there are a few cat fans out there. And he's running for the U.S. Senate to give an independent voice to Montana. After graduating first in his class at West Point, which is saying a lot, I went to Ranger School with a lot of the class of West Point in 771, and it was a really sharp crew. And so that is no small thing, highly competitive.
My class wasn't that sharp.
Well, I know standards have gone down. He served overseas. He served in the 101st Airborne. That brings up a bad joke that I won't repeat. And he's also served in the Special Forces. After his military service and after a successful career in business, he spent the last 8 years, as you know, leading the University of Montana. And that's no small task to do. Very much appreciate that. He was raised by 2 public school teachers. He believes in leadership and service over party and loyalty toward parties. It's clear that we are dissatisfied with both parties. We are not finding any satisfaction, myself certainly not. I think a lot of you all are here because of that. Both parties seem to be failing. They seem to be falling into ruts. They seem to be predictable. They seem to want to pick the candidates that the parties prefer rather than who the people prefer. And that's not right. That's why we need an independent elected in Montana, and Seth can be that independent. Background, I think, as a soldier and an executive, he's a turnaround leader, and he won't have any party bosses that he has to answer to. He will be his own person and can make his own decision to represent us, which I'm sure he'll do. But the independent is absolutely critical here. What he'll do is fight for lower costs for Montana families, which we need this. You might have noticed that groceries are going up and gas are going up alarmingly in the last few weeks. And importantly, he won't be part and will work to end the cultural wars that are now going on, that seem to occupy so much of our time. So let me just say one thing that epitomizes that. Also, before I get there, Seth protects public land, which is critical to us here in Montana, particularly western Montana, all of Montana. If we like to hunt, fish, and recreate on our public lands, those need to be protected and not sold off. And it concerns me quite a bit that despite protestations to the contrary, there are plans afoot to sell our public land. He also wants to make us competitive as a country, work with small producers and manufacturers and business, and so that we have fair trade. It really is, it was very telling that when Senator Daines pulled his stunt to have his successor anointed. Nobody got a chance to do that. It was really, he was anointed. Came in at the last minute, it was all set up and designed. That was wrong. That was wrong. Not just because he was a Republican. If a Democrat had done it, it would have been just as wrong. But you can't cut the vote out. And that's why we need an independent candidate to represent us. And Seth is that candidate. He's proven he can win support. He's proven that he has the leadership to take us where we need to go. And interestingly enough, and importantly, he's been endorsed by Governor Roscoe and also Democratic Senators John Tester and Max Fox as well. Both sides of the aisle think it's important that he be elected. And those are distinguished leaders who have worked for Montana and done well in our legislature for us as well. So I think that while Seth puts work forward and will work for us, and nobody doubts his capabilities, his skills, and his talent, the key thing is his independence, and it will be used to represent us Montanans. So Seth, thank you for coming tonight. We want to hear from you.
I'm going to make sure I have, oh, there we go. Can you guys hear me okay? All right, I'm going to eat the mic, okay? Paula would be proud. Yes, she said that to me before. But, well, hey, I just want, first off, thank you, George, for that very kind introduction. I thought I would chat for a few minutes, and then I'll take a lot of questions. You know, this campaign, if there's 3 words that summarize our approach to this campaign, it's just show up. Show up. Hear your questions. Hear your concerns. Take hard questions. Take easy questions. Hear your ideas. I've learned so much in this campaign over the past 5.5 months now, just by showing up in every nook and cranny of this state. That's what we're going to continue to do until Election Day. That's what you deserve from your political leaders or anyone seeking to serve you in elected office. So some of you, I have some friends from the university that I worked with for 8 years here. Some of you, I see some friends I've known for a long time. I know that some of you might be here for a health and wellness check. To say, did he actually go crazy? Why does somebody quit their job they love, while they have 2 kids in high school, 1 kid in middle school, to not only jump into this crazy world of politics, but to challenge a very powerful 2-party system? Why in the world would anybody do that? And what do you want to do it for? So those are the questions I want to answer. But a couple things that are important to know about me right up front before I get into that. And the first is that I'm the son of 2 public school teachers. And I know we have some school teachers in the audience. Can school teachers raise your hand? Thank you, school teachers. Now, do we have anybody like me whose parents were school teachers? Okay, so you know the deal, all of you, that when your folks are teachers, especially if they're teachers in the same school or same school district where you go, if you get out of line, your parents know about it before you get home. And let me tell you what, there's no such thing as due process. You're guilty There's no describing, and you pay the consequence. And I tell you that because I'm a guy that's, for most of my life, stayed in line. You know, I did well in school, I joined the Army, I served, as George said, I did all these things. I've been a rule follower most of my life. The other important thing to know about me is my family. I'm married to an incredible woman, a pediatrician, who spent most of her life and career focused on expanding access to healthcare in rural and tribal areas. Yeah, thank you. She's a proud MSU Bobcat, by the way. So, I know. And hear the boos and hisses. Yes, that's why the pictures of our kids as babies wearing Bobcat gear were kept under lock and key for 8 years when I was president at UM. Those were hidden. But we have 3 kids. We're blessed with 3 kiddos, 2 that just turned 16, and a boy-girl twins that just turned 16, and a 12-year-old little girl. And Chelsea and I, and I'm just going to say we continually because this is a team effort. Chelsea is basically a single mom right now. She's holding down the fort. She has an unemployed husband, and she's as big a part of this. But Chelsea and I together just have come to the undeniable conclusion that we are on a track to hand over a country to our kids that is less prosperous, that's less secure, that's more divided, that's more in debt, and in which our kids have fewer rights than we did. That is a moral failure. And so for a rule follower, for most of my life, I had decided, and Chelsea and I decided together, that it was time to step out of line. Because we see our so-called elected leaders who are supposed to be serving us, we see them spending more of their time working to divide us, to distract us, to rip us apart, to win elections than they are on actually solving the problems, the very real problems that we face as a country. That needs to change. We are being failed. And I will tell you, I've made very clear, I think we have, you don't have to do it by show of hands, but do we have some Republicans in this room tonight? Some people have been Republicans a lot of their life. I think we do. Do we have some Democrats in the room? People have been Democrats all their life? We do. We have a big group. We have a diverse group. I want to be really clear about something. I've said this from the start. I'm not running against Montana Democrats. And I'm not running against Montana Republicans. I'm running against a dysfunctional national system that has failed all of us. I'm going to talk about both of the national parties. It has. I want to talk about both the national parties for just a minute. So let's talk about the leader of the Senate Democrats, Chuck Schumer. Chuck Schumer said 10 years ago, in 2016, he was talking about Pennsylvania, but he said this applies to Michigan, to Wisconsin, to other states. He said, you know, for every blue-collar voter we lose in rural areas, well, we'll just gain back 2 in the cities and suburbs. Trading blue-collar workers in rural parts of this country to win voters in the cities and suburbs is not a strategy for winning Montana. That's a strategy for leaving Montana behind. And if you look at the leader of congressional Democrats for the last decade, leader of the Senate, leader of the House, for a decade, those leaders have come from exactly 2 states, New York and California. Again, that is not a strategy for fighting and winning and serving people in rural America. And let's talk about the Republican Party now. The Republican Party has come to take Montana's voters so for granted that they are treating elections here not like competitive races that are foundation of our democracy. They're treating them like corporate succession plans, where Steve Daines can tell us all, I'm running, until 3 minutes before the filing deadline when he withdraws and inserts a Trump-appointed U.S. attorney to have that seat, disenfranchising every single Republican in this state who should have had a voice in that primary. So this campaign is an opportunity for Montanans to say to Washington, D.C., enough. We deserve better than this. We deserve better than 2 parties that give us bad options and tell us we don't have any other choice. And I would argue that our failures here are not just political in this country right now, they're failures of leadership. We have some military veterans in the room. If you're a military veteran, will you raise your hand? Thank you to our veterans. We have some Navy folks, some Army folks. I joined my first platoon, Air Force, Marines, Coast Guard. Do we have any Space Force people? I love the Space Force. We do. All right, yes. All right. That's in the military. So I took command of my first infantry platoon in the 101st Airborne Division in Mosul, Iraq in 2003. And you learn on day one of leadership training in the Army that when the food comes out, who goes to the back of the line? The officers, the leaders. And if there's not enough to eat, who goes without? The leaders. Leaders eat last. Leaders eat last. It's a fundamental principle of leadership in the military. And frankly, in business, parenting. Would any of us ever think about having food while their kids went without? Yet we've somehow come to accept a model of leadership in this country where our political leaders are very happy going to the front of the line, heaping their plates full, enriching themselves, while hardworking families across this state and across the rest of this country are struggling to make ends meet. We don't have to accept that. And I'll tell you, I see evidence of that failure of leadership in each and every corner of this great state. I tell you, when I was talking to the hospital today, talking to Bitterroot Health, and they were talking about the workforce challenges and the tremendous struggles that people have finding a house here, making life work here. I had a woman in Helena came up to me a few months ago and said, you know what, I don't care what party you're a part of, but 65% of my Social Security check, my only form of income, goes to pay my rent. A few years from now, it's going to be 75%. I'm not going to be able to stay in my home. Woman here in Hamilton a few months ago, she said to me, you know what? My daughter would be appalled if I shared this with you. She didn't share who she was, but she said she and her boyfriend, they live together. They both have full-time jobs. They're basically living in a shack without plumbing. I want to talk about farmers in this state. Let's talk about the ag community for a second, because the only word to describe the situation farmers in this country are facing right now is crisis. Export markets that have been crushed by nonsensical tariffs, non-strategic tariffs, while input costs soar. Diesel's at $5 a gallon. Fertilizer costs soaring. Did you know farm bankruptcies in this country last year were up 46%? And that we're now a net importer of food in this country to the tune of almost $50 billion? If you're like me and you think food security is an important part of national security, that should worry you. And you'd think it would worry Congress. But Congress hasn't passed a farm bill since 2018. It's supposed to pass every 5 years. By my watch, their homework's 3 years late. Why can't they pass that bill? Why can't they do the things to make it easier for our farmers, our ranchers to compete and win globally? What they did manage to pass last year, so-called big beautiful bill, that gave about $1 trillion of tax cuts to the wealthy among us, while leading to cuts or changes to Medicaid that will likely result in 30,000 Montanans losing access to their health care. $5 to $6 billion impact to our hospitals. We will see rural hospitals, we will see clinics shutting down as a result of this. And when you lose a rural hospital, you don't just lose vital access to healthcare, you lose a key job hub, you lose a key community center. Who's standing up for rural America? Let's talk about education for a second. Education's near and dear to my heart, but we have come to so devalue public education in this country, and we pay teachers so little that at the start of last year, I think it was about 850 teaching positions unfilled, 30 to 40% shortage of qualified teachers in this state at many of our schools. What does that say about us when we aren't investing in that next generation? Not only are we not investing, that big beautiful bill I talked about, anybody know how much that bill added to our national debt? Yes, over $4 trillion. National debt is now at about 40 trillion. Now that's a number I can't even conceptualize it, so let me give you a number to help make it a little bit more tangible. That's $118,000. $118,000 is the debt share that a newborn American inherits. When I was a kid in the 70s, it was $3,000. What are we doing to our kids? Now, Congress, on the other hand, they're wealthier than ever. Members of Congress today are wealthier than at any point in the history of this country, modern history. And we see corruption running rampant. And I'll tell you, we laugh, we all know it, right? But I want to give you a sobering stat. The Department of Justice has a division called the Public Integrity Division. Well, it's an important division, right? These are supposed to be the folks that are watching to make sure, elected officials, government officials don't have their hand in the till. In January of 2025, there were 40 lawyers / investigators in that division. January 2025, guess how many there are as of a couple of months ago? 2. So 95% reduction in the people that are supposed to be watching to make sure that our government officials aren't engaging in political corruption. It's failing us, folks. And I tell you, our failures are more than just political or financial. I would argue that they're spiritual. We are seeing billions of dollars spent every single year working to divide us and distract us. Politics is ugly. I've felt it already. When you run as an independent, you get shot at by both sides. Now, I heard a saying from an old pilot during the Vietnam era that said, well, you know what? It's all right that you're taking flack. When you start taking a lot of flack, that's how you know you're over the target. But I tell you, my Democratic opponent in this race posted a picture of my face with the letters POS written across it. Piece of, now, I've told myself they really meant proud of Seth. I don't think that's what they meant, but I'm trying to tell them. And my Republican opponent has called me every name in the book, and they've published, their dark money group, published my personal cell phone number to tens of thousands of Montanans. It's ugly. And if you think this doesn't have an impact, think again, because I will tell you about a survey by Pew Research, 25 different countries. 25 countries, they asked citizens in 25 different countries, do you believe that your fellow citizens are good people? Out of those 25 countries, which country's citizens answered yes at the lowest percentage? The United States of America. Only 47% of Americans thought that their fellow Americans are good people. Nigerians answered at a higher rate. South Africans. Now, I mention South Africa because South Africans experienced apartheid in our lifetime, folks. Yet more South Africans think that their fellow citizens are good people than we do. This is a failure. This is what happens when you have political leaders who spend all their time working to divide us and distract us to maintain a status quo that's not working for the hardworking families in this state. So this campaign, we're offering a way out. We're offering another choice that says, you know what? You can declare your independence, not from your party, but from rank partisanship. You can choose a better way. You can choose a campaign that is focused on bringing us together to solve problems instead of ripping us apart to win an election. And so you might ask, okay, what's this campaign about? It's very simple. The great thing about being an independent is you get to create your own platform. You don't just adopt a party platform. And our platform has 3 pillars. Number 1 is to make the Montana way of life a reality again for every single Montanan. Number 2 is to invest in American competitiveness and security right here in our great state. Number 3 is to reform a broken and corrupt national system. Now I'm going to take 30 seconds to talk just about each of those pillars. So what do I mean when I say make the Montana way of life a reality again? It's pretty simple. It's a renewal of that very basic social contract that sits, I think, at the heart of the American dream itself, that says to every American, if you're willing to show up every day and put in a hard day's work, now I want to be really clear, you got to show up, you got to do your part. There's no free lunches, you got to show up, you got to do your part, but if you do that, you ought to be able to afford to put a roof over your head. You ought to be able to afford to see a doctor when you get sick without having to drive 2 hours to do so. You should be able to make decisions in privacy about your health care with your doctor and with your family without the government getting involved. You should be able to send your kid to a good public school. Whether you're a millionaire, whether you make minimum wage, every Montanan, every American should have the opportunity to receive a high-quality education. You should be able to hunt, fish, and recreate on our public lands, our common ground. You should have leaders who live into and honor that great promise in our state's constitution that gave the right to every Montanan today and for future generations, the right to a clean and healthful environment. You should be able to retire with dignity. If you're a veteran, you should have the promises that this country made to you kept. If you're a member of a tribal community, you should have the treaties that this nation made with your sovereign nation honored, and you should have your culture respected. That's not too much to ask. And I tell you, we can all agree on those things. We can do that. What's it mean to to invest in American competitiveness and security here in Montana? Well, that means making sure that we're supporting our farmers, our ranchers with common sense policies that open markets for them, that allow them to compete globally and receive a premium price for the high quality products that we produce, to provide support when that inevitable downturn comes, that makes investments in our education and research infrastructure here in this state. You know, we have 2 R1 research universities in Montana, with a state with a little over 1 million people, 2 top-tier research universities. That's a huge asset. And yet, Montanans 25 and older with a college degree, almost 2/3 of them live outside Montana. Texas, it's a little bit less than 30%. And I bring that up, that's personal to me. That means if you think about the stats, I've got 3 kids. Means 2 out of those 3 probably won't be able to find work here in this great state. We need leaders who are going to fight to attract and support job creation in this state so our kids can live here. The final pillar, and arguably maybe the most important, is that we have to reform a political system in this country that's become broken and corrupt. Now, I'm running as an independent because I believe strongly that Montana deserves a senator who doesn't work for Chuck Schumer, and that Montana deserves a senator who's not afraid of Donald Trump. But we need more than that. We need to begin to immediately address the numerous ways in which our elected officials, our government officials, are using their positions to enrich themselves. The fact that we don't have right now in place a ban on insider trading by members of Congress is disgraceful. The fact that we see people in government making $200,000 bets on oil futures right before an announcement about the Iran war. Come on, we're smarter than that. We need a basic code of ethics for our Supreme Court. We need term limits for the Supreme Court. And for Congress. And you say, okay, why do we need term limits? Well, let me ask a question of the group. Does anybody know about what the approval rate of Congress is right now? Yeah, it depends on what survey you look at. I saw one recently said 10%. My only question is like, who's in that 10%? They're just doing a bang-up job there in DC right now. So 10% approval. What's the re-election rate of incumbents in Congress? It's about 92%. So tell me how you have a body with 10% approval, but 92% of the people keep their jobs. Exactly, money. And that's why we have to overturn Citizens United. And if you're still on the fence about the Montana plan and voting in favor of the transparent election initiative, get on the right side of the fence. The money that has flown into and just flooded our politics is poisoning it. I think it's a 2,700% increase since 2010. Are we better informed as a result? No, we're not. And the other thing we have to realize is that we have to end partisan gerrymandering in this country. So we have about 435, right, House seats in Congress, right? 100 U.S. senators. About 95% of our House races in this country are not competitive in the general election, meaning that the winner is largely decided in the primary. The election in November is a formality. That's not okay. We need political competition, okay? When I was a kid, you walked down the grocery store aisle, how many types of peanut butter were there? It's like 2 or 3, right? Jif, Skippy, generic brand. Peter Pan came out and I thought that was awesome. But we never got it because it had the premium because Peter Pan was on the label. You go down the aisles of the grocery store today, oh my gosh, how many different types of peanut butter there are. Yeah, hundreds maybe. And that's competition, right? That's choice. Yet here we are with still these two parties that say, you know what? It doesn't matter if you like them. You got to choose one of those options. In this race, we have a Republican candidate who's basically rigged an election to get on the ballot. You have a Democratic candidate who's had tons of dark money flow in and win that election. A candidate who's said, if you're poor in this country right now, it's because you've decided to be poor. Whose major support is coming from a dark money Republican PAC. And this is because they're trying to defend the status quo. They're trying to defend the two-party system. And we have a chance right now in Montana. We have an opportunity this November to say, you know what? We reject that idea. We reject that these are the only choices and that the power sits with the parties and not with the people. And this campaign has a chance, and all of us have a chance to show a new approach to politics in this country. A politics of problem solving and bringing people together. A politics of compromise, where maybe I don't get everything I want, but I can get most of it and we can move things forward. Now you might say, Seth, you're naive. And you're right, I'm naive. Again, reference the guy who quit a job he loved that paid him well to come do this. But you don't have to look that far back in our history to see a different model of leadership. And I want to end with a little bit of a history quiz and a lesson, because I think it's illustrative of the leadership we've had and the leadership we must demand we have again. And I want to ask a question of October 1957. Big global event happened that month, that year. Does anybody know what it is? Sputnik. This is a smart audience.
No, we're all.
So some of you remember. How did it feel? How did this country feel after the Soviets launched Sputnik?
Scared shitless.
Scared shitless. What else? Any other? That maybe summarizes it, right?
Special education things.
Yeah, so scared. And that's how we felt. Terrified. Every amateur radio operator in this country could hear Sputnik. Beep, beep, beep. Talked to people, they said, yep, we used to go out and watch it go over. One woman I was talking about, she said, I was 11 when Sputnik launched. And I remember laying on my bed later that week, and I heard this whistling sound. And I was convinced that the Soviets were landing something. Turns out it was the antenna. But why am I talking about Sputnik? Because that fear, I want to ask you, how did our political leaders in that moment deal with the very real fear and anger that Americans felt? Why did they beat us? How were we behind? And I ask you, what did the Democratic Party do in response to that? Did they say, yes, this is our issue that we're going to beat them over the head with for the next 3 years, and in 1960 we'll take back the presidency and then we'll fix things? Did the Republican Party say, oh, we got them now, those pinko Democrats who this is how we're going to beat them and this is how we're going to maintain power, we just have to keep hitting on this issue? Did they use Americans fear as a resource to mine for electoral advantage? No, they did not. Less than a year after Sputnik launched, Republican President Dwight Eisenhower signed into law a bill passed by a democratically controlled Congress. That bill was called the National Defense Education Act. That bill invested in K-12 education. Some of you went to science labs in your high schools as a result of that bill that were a lot better shape. Some of you entered a teaching career with support from that bill. It invested in research, it invested in the trades. And I talk about this because that spirit of investment, that spirit of saying when we face a challenge as America, we come together. We bet on America. We invest in the belief that America can compete and can win in any contest that we have anywhere in the world. That was the spirit that allowed us not just to win the space race, right? We saw 12 years later, we put a person on the moon. It allowed us to prevail in the Cold War, and it set the stage for 75 years of economic and technological domination by the United States of America. That's the type of leadership that we deserve moving forward. It's the type of leadership that we collectively must demand from our leaders. It's the type of leadership that this campaign is focused on. And I would be incredibly honored to serve all of you in the United States Senate next year. Thank you very much, and I'd be happy to take questions.
I have no expectation for you to support your policy. But if you will commit to filing up the edges of extremism and get rid of this stuff, it'll be helpful. I think we're gonna start on that in primaries in Lamar County and make these progress. So thank you. In addition to Sputnik, on our front lawn in Bakersfield, California, we can see the atomic blast from the Nevada test ranges. In that same time.
Well, thank you, John. You talked about taking the edges off of extremism, and honestly, that's the focus of this campaign. You know, I don't think either party has a monopoly on good ideas. And I think we are actually far more united than Washington would have us believe. You know, I talk about it in terms of football. And here's where the Grizz fans will be like, oh, football. And the Cat fans will be like, oh, football. Based on last year. But I think politically, most Montanans live somewhere between the 25-yard lines. You know, maybe you got somebody that's at the 20 or the 40-yard line on the left, somebody that's at the 40-yard line on the right. They're only 20 yards apart, but we're increasingly the loudest voices in our political realm are at the 1-yard line, seeking to rip us apart. I was talking to a Republican legislator recently, and he said, you know, the fight in Montana is not between Republicans and Democrats right now. It's between the extremes and the rest of us. And this campaign is about building a coalition for the rest of us. And I've seen it. I've seen it not too far from where we stand today. Actually, a few months ago, I came down to the fairgrounds for a meeting about the Sheep Creek mine. And I tell you, in that room, we had the head of the pachyderms. We had the head of the Democratic Party. We had independents. You know what was common among all of us that were there? We were Montanans. And we were Montanans that cared deeply about the Bitterroot River. Not only one of the most important and iconic rivers in this state, but one of the most important watersheds in this country. And we said, you know what? You don't get to just bowl us over. We're going to be heard. And I was the only Senate candidate there at that meeting. And I'm going to continue to show up. I'm going to continue to represent you, because your voices, whether you're a Democrat, whether you're a Republican, whether you're an independent, your voice deserves to be heard. And we have an obligation to future generations to be good stewards of these incredible natural treasures that we're so blessed to enjoy each and every day in this state. Montanans come together on those types of issues, and there's a lot more. Yes?
I'm an old science teacher and chemist, worked at agencies.
You're not gonna ask me a chemistry question. All right.
I'm really disappointed in people's support of research and disappointed in the support of climate.
Yeah. So the question was disappointed in support for research and of climate control. Hey, I know it's hot in here. My colleagues could, if anybody wants a water, raise your hand and we'll deliver some waters around to folks. Okay, yeah. You know, keep a hand raised. We'll get some waters coming around. I know it's hot in here. I appreciate you being here. We're gonna have a little sweat and we're gonna work through some things. So, look, research. One of the reasons I jumped into this race last year, in the spring of 25, I was leading a R1 research university, a public flagship research university, and I watched as our federal government was working to systematically dismantle a research and education enterprise that is the envy of the world. Right here. And I tell you, I said it last year, and I'll say it again, that's about as smart as sitting in the corner right before the bell rings for a boxing match and cutting off your right arm. We are in a globally competitive world. Make no mistake, China is investing in research. China is investing in education. So is India. So are other countries. And we are putting ourselves at a tremendous disadvantage. We have been, and we must continue to be, and get back to being the country that attracts the world's very best and brightest, and to be the hub for innovation. So, absolutely on research. When it comes to the issues of climate change, look, it's undeniable. We're seeing different weather patterns. We're seeing the impacts. Here's where as an independent, I'm about building compromise around common goals. Even if we have different reasons for taking an action, we can have common actions. And so let's talk about energy policy. I'm an all of the above energy guy. I don't think we can move away from fossil fuels right now. We need fossil fuel energy production. But it's hard for me to stomach politicians who say, I'm an all of the above energy guy, until the president, who doesn't like how windmills look off the coast of his golf course, says that wind energy is bad, and so suddenly we have to strip wind power off of the grid at a time when we have a huge energy demand. I mean, this is dumb on so many levels, right? I call it right-wing woke, where you have to say renewable is just bad, right? It's crazy. So let's, from a job standpoint, these are jobs that we can create. We can be an exporter of renewable energy technology. Utility rates. Does anybody feel great about their utility bill recently? So yet, why are we paying companies billions of dollars to take wind projects off the grid at a time when energy demand is soaring? How about national security? Do you know China? We just talked about China. China has almost half of its energy production capacity that comes from renewable energy. So guess who's a lot less impacted when the Strait of Hormuz shuts down due to a war without a strategy? Who's less impacted? China. So, to me, there are so many reasons why we need to support the expansion of renewable energy development.
What are any plans you could put forth to work with other senators to really take a solid look at Social Security and shore it up?
Yeah, I'm glad. So the question about Social Security, really good question. I'm glad you brought it up, because when I talk about the Montana Way of Life, I talk about everybody should be able to retire with dignity. You've paid into this system. You deserve to have those benefits paid to you. So, and this is important, because 2032, everybody knows what the projection is for 2032. The Social Security Fund is expected to be insolvent in that year, and estimated benefits cuts of up to 22%. So this is really important for y'all to recognize, because whoever you send to the United States Senate in this November is going to play an important role in deciding what we do. Now, here's the good news. Anybody tells you that Social Security can't be solvent, can't be fixed, they're lying. Okay? They're lying. It's not insolvent. It doesn't have to be privatized. What's the cap on the income that's taxable for Social Security purposes? Yeah, about $184,000. And so I tell you that because somebody who makes $100,000, it's a good salary, right? 100% of their income is taxable for Social Security purposes. Somebody that makes $2 million, less than 10% of their income is taxable for Social Security purposes. That doesn't sound right. And you don't have to raise it the whole way, you raise it a little bit. The system's solvent. We just need leaders who are going to actually speak truth to you and look at proactive solutions. There's some other options out there, but eminently fixable. Yeah, Skip.
Thank you, sir. Well,
I love Skip because Skip, whenever I'm on the radio, Skip calls in and asks a question over in Billings. So
sometimes I have a non-bashful day. But I hope everybody noticed today, before you spoke, Seth, George Corn spoke, and I thought he looked younger than I've ever seen him. Seth, I was going to ask you, we discussed about what would be some common ground issues that you as an independent and me as a regular Republican would really feel good about together. But instead, I think you cover them all in your soliloquy so far. So I'm going to ask you, the most important issue in this county that I know that doesn't have a red or a blue or an independent flag on it is the Sheep Creek Mine. And I complimented you even on the radio about being the only candidate of any of the candidates, Republican or Democrat or Independent, that ran in the primary for a national office. You're the only one that showed up at our meetings at the fairgrounds, so thank you for that. And so, if you were a senator in Washington and you had an opportunity to influence things that would help us, the people most affected by the Sheep Creek Mine, would you do the best you could to make sure it got off of Fast Track 41 and to make sure that the people had more to say about what the effects are of something like that for everybody downstream in your whole district of the state of Montana? Thank you, sir.
yes, the answer is absolutely yes. I mean, we've heard loud and clear that Republican, Democrat, Independent, you don't mess with the Bitterroot River. You don't mess with the people of the Bitterroot. You have a voice. That voice should matter. And look, these are one-way doors. You make a mistake, you tarnish the headwaters of the Bitterroot River, that is generational impact. So these are not things that you fast track. These are not things that you enter into lightly. And I would tell you, I was just looking at this today. You look at that application on there, and for some reason, the step in this process called environmental assessment, canceled. So if I were in the U.S. Senate, I'd be calling up, hey, Secretary of the Interior, tell me about this. Who's pushing for that environmental assessment to be canceled? Why are our voices not being heard? Now, here's the good news. You don't have to be, supportive of conservation. Let me put it this way. You can be supportive of conservation and still be pro-business. Now, here's things I've learned. Like, just learn a little bit going around talking to people. And I learned that there's 8,000 abandoned mines in Montana. We have a lot of critical minerals around this state. We need critical minerals. We do. It's important for national security. But why risk the headwaters of the Bitterroot River when we've got 8,000 mines? Let's look other places first before we take that risk and make sure that your voices are heard, that we're doing right by our kids and our grandkids and generations of Montanans to come.
Knowing that our state is getting warmer, our winters aren't as awful, what do you think about the data centers?
So, look, I am against anything that happens without Montanans' input, and I'm against anything that raises our utility rates, that tarnishes our water, and has impacts like noise on our community that we don't understand. So, and whether that's a data center, whether that's a mine, that is my position. Now, and so I've said publicly, any proposed data center of any sort absolutely has to have community involvement and complete transparency about the full costs. What is the power demand? What's the water impact? What's the noise impact? What are the full costs? These redacted contracts agreed to in the middle of the night without community involvement, no way. You can't have it. Any proposed data center, those full costs have to be borne by the data center themselves. We can't see our utility rates going up because of data centers. We can't see our water being used up or polluted because of data centers. In any proposed data center, gotta have Montana labor. Now, what could I do in the US Senate about this? Well, I'd support the Ratepayer Protection Act that spells out very clearly that ratepayers shouldn't pay more as data centers anywhere. I'd support the Energy Information Agency making sure that existing data centers, any potential new data centers anywhere, have clear accountability and efficiency standards that are published and made public. So they're not happening without our environment, our involvement without their happening. I'd make sure that we held any of those companies accountable, through the Senate processes, through the tax code. There are lots of ways. We need guardrails in place. Right now, we don't have those. Yes?
You were in the military, obviously used assault weapons. What's your position on a ban of an assault weapons in the country? There was a ban, and during that period of time, the mass murders did decrease. What's your position on reinstating the assault weapons ban?
So that's not the first place I would go. I'm a strong supporter of the Second Amendment. I think we need to do three things. I think we need to enforce the measures we already have on the books. I think we need to look hard at and pass things like red flag laws that prevent mentally unstable people from having access to guns. And I think we have to make sure that we're doing everything we can to address the mental health crisis in this country. And I was just actually meeting with Bitterroot Health today, and I was appalled to hear that our 3 mental health crisis centers, there's one in Missoula, one up in Kalispell, one here in Hamilton, or in the Bitterroot, all 3 have shut down in the past year due to lack of funding. And so we absolutely need to take significant steps to address the plague of gun violence. I think there's a lot of things that we can do immediately that we can get broad bipartisan agreement on. Yes?
Yeah, I'll sit down because my dog's sleeping.
Oh, sorry, buddy.
My father was a naval aviator. I was in the Air Force. I was a flag chief. And I was one of those guys that stared down at the Soviet Russian during the Cold War. But in the last several decades, both parties have implemented wars that were not approved by Congress. If I read the Constitution, who's John? And I'm talking both parties, starting with Bush, Obama, they all did it. And it's got to come to a stop, because if you want to get to the core of deficits, of actually military competition with China, which is being degraded with the current war,
Yep.
we gotta quit it.
Absolutely.
I think the first thing you should say, stand up and say is, Congress should say, you cannot have a war unless we declare it.
Yes. You're preaching my language. And I'll tell you, so presidents say what they mean on their way out the door. Okay? And I'll probably talk about our first president, our only independent president, George Washington, in a little bit. But I want to talk about President Eisenhower. Because what did he focus his farewell address on? The military-industrial complex. And the amount of money that is made when we send America's sons and daughters to war, to shed blood on foreign soil. He warned us against this, and we've seen it. 25 years ago, I became a second lieutenant in the U.S. Army. Shortly thereafter, 9/11 happened. 25 years later, trillions of dollars later, are we safer today? Are we more financially secure today? No. And yet, we have, again, a United States Congress at this very moment, utterly failing in its constitutional duty to be the body that declares war and sends our sons and daughters into harm's way. And I want to tell you, the other president, in his farewell address, predicted this. So again, our only independent president, George Washington. What did he dedicate his farewell address to talking about? Yeah, what he called the baneful effects of the spirit of party. Because do we have any engineers here tonight? Anybody's an engineer? Yes, we do. So can a good engineer tell you the ways in which their design could fail? Right? And then you guard against it. That's kind of the point of engineering, right? So the founders, the engineers of this republic, if you can keep it, as Ben Franklin said, the engineers of this republic, this system of checks and balances, right? They wrote a constitution. Article 1 of the Constitution talks about what branch? Congress, right? Executive is after that, and we have Supreme Court. Congress is supposed to set the laws. Executive is supposed to carry them out. Executive is also the commander-in-chief, right? There's checks and balances. Congress is supposed to place a check on the power of the commander-in-chief to get us into wars by making sure that if you're going to go to war, that you know why it's an imminent threat, that you know what the strategy is, and you know what the exit plan is. And yet, here we're in the midst of another one, where Congress failed to do its duty. Congress said that, partisanship, loyalty to our president, matters more. And this is what Washington warned us about. He said that what he called the baneful effects of the spirit of party, he called them partisan factions. He said factions create a sense of revenge in Americans. He said that partisan factions could, over the course of time and events, become potent engines through which cunning, ambitious, unprincipled men could subvert the will of the people and usurp the reins of government. So when party becomes more important than country, that's how the system fails. And when party becomes more important than country, Congress fails in its obligation to make sure that the commander-in-chief has a plan before going to war, and that's how you end up losing a war to Iran, which is what is happening right now. So they knew how this design could fail. And that's one of the reasons I'm running as an independent, because we need country before party. We need leaders that answer to you, not to their party boss. Yes?
We were at a meeting here, my wife and I, last week, and Sam Forstad was here, and someone asked the question, how do you get young people involved? Because they don't vote at the same rate all these gray-haired people vote. But there's just no participation at that level between 18 and 40. I think it's like 27% people vote. We're voting at a rate, people 60 and older voting at a rate of 50-something%, 60-something%. How are you going to get to them?
Yeah, it's a great question. How do you get the youth vote? And look, everybody loves positive passion and emotion. People don't really like anger. The only thing worse than anger is apathy. And I think we're seeing in a lot of young people today a sense of apathy. A sense that, I've seen power ping pong back and forth between these two parties. And yet I've done all the right things. I saw it. I talked to students for years at the University of Montana State, and I worked hard in high school. I came here. I worked hard to get a teaching degree. All I want to do is go back to my hometown and be a school teacher. But like the 2022 UM grad I saw in Gardner a couple of months ago, who said, we have no hope of ever owning a home in this community. They don't feel like their government's accountable to them. And I heard far too many of our students at the University of Montana saying, you know what, it doesn't really matter. I don't see change no matter what I do. It's one of the reasons I jumped into this. And so what we have to show is a political system that's more responsive. That says, you know what, I don't answer to outside forces in DC. I answer to you. And I'm really proud. We have Forward Montana, which is a youth get out to vote organization that has publicly endorsed our campaign. Because here's the thing, the younger you are, the more likely you are to be independent. And we have here in this room some recent grads at the University of Montana working for us. Clemens is in the back there. We also, I don't know, Maya's up here. Maya was our student body vice president, just graduated this May. And we're gonna go, we're gonna show up, we're gonna engage and hear their questions, hear their concerns, try to address them, and show that their voice matters, that their voice isn't taken for granted. And that's gonna be our focus, because you're right, we're in trouble. This country can sustain a lot, it cannot sustain a loss of hope in the youth. Yes?
So what is your MO for contacting
You know, getting out and spending time with them, I'm trying to understand how social media works a little bit more. You know, Maya's helping, you know, our team's gonna be helping. Classes are getting back in session at the universities here in the coming weeks. We're gonna be present, we're gonna be out talking to them. We're gonna be working through groups like I said, like Forward Montana. I was honored to receive their endorsement and their support. Again, I think whether you're 75 or whether you're 18, our approach is similar. Just show up. Show up and have the conversation, engage on terms that, on their terms. Yes.
I'm Archie Thomas, and Ravalli County is 74% national forest. And historically, is a major employer has been the Forest Service and the Rocky Mountain Lab. And as best we can figure, there's been about $3 million in payroll, annual payroll, cut from at least the lab. And so my question is basically, how do you plan on dealing with that specifically, how it affects research, how it affects this neighborhood, and just Doge in general, and the disruption that's brought about?
Yeah, thank you. Good question. You work to support these agencies that are critical to the way of life that we enjoy. I've said the United States has been and should continue to be the world's leader in scientific research. This is not a Republican or a Democratic issue. This is an American issue. So we need to invest in support these types of agencies. And Dr. Bloom's here tonight. And it'd be an incredibly important priority for me to invest. And we talk about the Forest Service, right? We've got a lot of politicians that give lip service to supporting public lands. You're not supporting public lands when you take, when you have a trillionaire with a chainsaw gutting the staffing of these agencies that are responsible for caring for our public lands and caring for our wildlife and making sure that our habitats are healthy. So it's really a simple answer is, yeah, is there efficiency gains to be made in the U.S. government? Yes. If you've worked in government, if you've been in the Army, I don't know about the Navy or the Air Force, but if you've been in the Army, you know there's some efficiency gains. But you have to be smart about it. When I got to the University of Montana, we had about a $10 million structural budget deficit on a basis of about $130 million. Almost 10%. Did we take a chainsaw to it? No. Was it stressful? We can call it, because we had to work. Like there are places that we need to make sure we're making every efficiency gain. But we are cutting out vital organs. And we have to fight to restore those and support those. Now, the hard part is we've made some cuts that are gonna have long-term impact. It's gonna take us a long time to build back. Yes?
There's no zoning that I know of really to look like somebody owned a 100-year-old ranch or something, and then people who have a lot of money just run through it, and even do the zoning that the farmers who don't have enough money, so they get into this money crunch. So what would be your thoughts on trying to
Yeah, so question about like zoning or people's decisions. I mean, those are really hard. Those are local issues and those are individual. I mean, I believe, I'm a strong believer in property rights, right? Private and public property rights. And I think that's really important that we support those. I think, you know, I'm deeply concerned about the challenges that farmers are facing. And so I think we need to support, with common sense policies, our farmers across the country, their ability to compete, their ability to maintain their organizations. But it requires, if you want to talk about supporting farmers, I want to talk about small town America, it's all well and good to say we need that next generation of farmers, but if you don't have, quality rural hospitals, if we've gutted Medicaid, and if you haven't funded schools, how can a young family continue that operation when there's nowhere to get health care, so supporting rural communities is, yes, it's ag policy, but it's also healthcare, it's also education. It's those key things that we need for rural communities to thrive. Zoning, I won't be setting zoning regulations in the U.S. Senate. I do think that that's something we'd have to talk about more at the local level, but those are really important trade-offs, because we got to think about how do we get more housing for young families to live here, for teachers, for nurses, for cops, for anyone to live here, while recognizing we want to protect the environment in green spaces. I think there's ways to do that, but that's at the local level. Yes, in the green.
This
We'll come
is
back here.
adjacent to your, how do you get
No,
young?
come back.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
This is adjacent to getting the young people involved and also farming and everything else. Montana's way behind the eight ball on universal preschool and daycare, and now there's an executive order out there gutting the regulations on Head Start. So this community, Head Start was the leader in all of that and still is providing the most. I would think, what's your stand on universal preschool? I think that'd be a way to get young families.
So let's play fill in the blank here. An ounce of prevention is worth. We all know it. We all know it. Why do we ignore that? Why do we ignore that? This idea that it's too expensive to have pre-K. It's too that's crazy. It's too expensive not to. Yes. Now come to the back.
As a retired coach, on the advice of Robert Kennedy, the president signed an executive order putting in that children should receive a separate MMR vaccine. They don't even make it. And so that will take years for them to manufacture this. The FDA will have to test it. I mean, it's ridiculous. And so my question is, if we would get back there and the Senate would be more, could there possibly be a way to recall our and get somebody smart there?
I don't know the mechanics of that. I think what we need is leaders in Congress, leaders at the national level, standing up in support of science. I'm married to a pediatrician, and we've watched misinformation over the past 2 decades lead to a situation where we have seen diseases that have been eradicated, like measles, making their way back and taking the lives of kids. Can we not agree that a kid's life is more important than ideological warfare? Especially here in Montana, right? Some of you will know that now he's not a U of M grad, but Maurice Hilleman. The Hilleman Scholars Program at Montana State University, named after him, was a leader in developing, right here from Montana, a lot of these vaccines that have saved lives. And to see kids in America today dying unnecessarily as a result of misinformation is heartbreaking. Yes, in the back.
I appreciate very much your speaking to and acknowledging the moral failure of our government. Highly critical. What is the objective difference between right and wrong behavior?
That's a very good, what's the difference? I think it's, integrity and doing what you believe is right for the people that you're serving. That's right behavior. You know, and maybe I'll use this story to illustrate this, because, you know, much of my approach to leadership over the course of my career has been informed by my experience in the military and when I learned about leadership. One of the people that, you know, when I was graduating West Point, I had to go to the U.S. Army Ranger School the day after graduation from West Point. So we talked a little bit about Ranger School. Ranger School, as George knows, is not fun. It's a 3-month-long, nearly 3-month-long simulated combat. I lost about 25 pounds. You don't get sleep. You don't eat. It's miserable. So I was asking a lot of people for advice about this. And I had to go there because I got a scholarship. It was, you know, fine, so I had to get Army training in. So I flew to Fort Benning the day after graduation. One of the people I asked advice about Ranger School from was a guy by the name of Barry McCaffrey. General McCaffrey was a 4-star general. He was the drug czar in the Clinton administration. The youngest 4-star general, I think, in the history of the Army, maybe. Vietnam vet, 2 tours. And I asked him, I said, "Sir, I know you went to Ranger School a long time ago, but what advice would you have for me?" And he said to me, he paused for a second, looked off in the back of the room. And those of you still see him, he's a commentator on the news sometimes on national security issues. He has this great general's voice. He talks like this, and he has this really funny accent. And I asked him, "Sir, what advice would you have for me?" And he paused and he said, "I was in my 2nd tour in Vietnam. We've been out in the bush. I was a company commander. We've been out in the bush for a month. Our uniforms are rotting off of us. We hadn't had a shower. We get ambushed and we're pinned down in a firefight." At this point, I'm thinking, I asked him about Ranger School. Why is he talking about Vietnam? But I said, I'm standing there. I have to stay at attention, basically. And then he finishes, and he said, "We're pinned down by a firefight, and it's miserable. I'm trying to call for radio support. Bullets hitting on the tree right above my head." And I remember thinking to myself, God, this really sucks. But it could be worse. I could be a Ranger School. And I'll stop talking like him, but he said, "But you know what, at Ranger School you'll be fine. Just don't quit, put one foot in front of the other." But he said, "I want to tell you something. I'm really proud of you that, you know, you're going, you got this scholarship, good for you." But he put his finger in my chest really hard. And he said, "When you get to your 1st platoon, don't ever effing tell them that you're a Rhodes Scholar." Not that I was planning to, right? But he looked at me in the eye and he said, "They don't care. Your soldiers care about 2 things. 1, are you working every single day to serve them? Not yourself, no other motive. Are you working every day with their best interests in mind? Working to fight for them and bring them home safely? That has to be your only motivation. They have to see it. Number 2, are you good at your job? Are you able, not just, you don't have to be the best machine gunner, you don't have to be the best squad leader, platoon sergeant, but you have to be the best platoon leader. And if you do those things well, those 2 things, they'll follow you to hell and back." And when I think about right and wrong, when I think about this role, right is doing right by the people of this great state. And knowing each and every day that I have no boss other than you.
Let's fast forward a year or 2 here in the Senate, and you have the opportunity to overturn Citizens United, but it requires the filibuster to go away. What's your stance on voting down the filibuster to pass something like overturning Citizens United?
It's a really good question. How do I feel about the filibuster? I think the filibuster is important. I do not think we should get rid of the filibuster. The filibuster is a break on the tyranny of a small majority. Founders put that in place for a reason. And frankly, the focus, because I get asked that a lot, actually, and it's the focus that we have on the filibuster is a symptom of the problems that this country faces, and that we are struggling to have people that are able to build consensus and work on things. It's each party hopes to fight and scratch and claw their way to a 1-vote majority so they can jam through policies And if they have the presidency, then they use executive orders, and then it whipsaws back and forth. And I tell you, I was in Kalispell yesterday. I met with the Greater Valley Health, the federally qualified health center up there, FQHC. I met with the Flathead Electric Co-op. I met with some people focused on stability of Flathead Lake. I met with business leaders. You know, one thing that I heard from everybody that is one of their biggest challenges? They have no regulatory or policy stability. Everything whipsaws back and forth. Flathead Electric Corporation saying, look, we've got to bring more power online. We're investing, in a multi-billion-dollar gas-fired power plant, but we don't know what the regulatory landscape looks like because the policy flip-flops. We don't have any stability. You have an administration who, by fiat, cancels a trade agreement that they themselves negotiated last time they were in power. How do you plan as a business around that? How do we plan? So our institutions were designed to force us to be able to build some compromise and build durable policies or maybe you don't get everything you want, but you have to work and you get some stuff done. And I think rather than fixing the filibuster, I think we ought to fix our system to get more people who can build consensus. Yes?
In a short portion of my life, I was a politician, and I say thank you.
Thank you for your service.
I thank you for that information I collected. But one of the things that really stood out to me was my naivete. You don't have naivete going. I have naivete going.
I have a little. I am running against a two-party system.
So what I found is that each item that I was trying to simulate on, I learned everything I could and made a decision based on knowledge, which you obviously do that. But with the sheet music, one of the things is that law. You have the environmental, you have all the layers. We did a lot of subdivisions together, and we had all these things that we were fighting for, and we mentioned environmental. What I found was the condition for everything we worked on, I worked on, was if there's something bad at the beginning, which that law would allow that to happen, is a really pro-billionaire, pro-corporation law. They just let it do it. And I noticed, I've talked to a couple of people that I talked to commissioners, Death-Throes is one of our commissioners, and his point was, it's gonna happen. Here's the problem, going back to look for something so definite, to see about figuring out a way that can't get away with things as easily, even if we have layers of regulation. I just wanna make that point.
Yeah.
Everything I've looked at.
Going to the root cause, the things that get
Right.
slid in there.
This isn't even a slide, this is
Yeah.
so.
Thank you.
break it for a minute. Seth, how you doing?
Okay. I'm doing great. I want to acknowledge this. I'll do this all night. But I want to acknowledge that it is warm. It is 7. If folks want to leave, it's 7:03. Feel free at any time. I'm gonna stay for a little while longer, but I'm gonna go with a couple other questions. Yes.
Seth,
My Norwegian friends.
no, you're close.
Close. Denmark.
It's Denmark.
Oh, that's
Why,
embarrassing.
George? Why Denmark?
Good question.
Why Denmark?
I don't know.
Yeah, you're a NATO guy.
Oh yeah.
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 That's why.
Mhm.
I am absolutely opposed to the overtaking of Greenland
Oh yeah.
from Denmark.
Yeah.
Opposed.
Absolutely. As you should be.
Okay, but my question to you is, you're on the ballot, last I checked last night, with 3 other candidates. Why are you going to be that candidate that gets elected out of that other 3 pool? And how are you gonna do it?
So we're building a coalition for all Montanans. You've got a Republican on the ballot, you got a Democrat on the ballot, you got a Libertarian on the ballot. We are building a coalition that cuts across every partisan group. A couple weeks ago in Shoto, Montana, been to the wagon wheel in Shoto. It's It's a great spot. Had a lunchtime meeting there, 25 people there. In the room, we had the former head of the Montana Democratic Party, Mary Sexton. We had the former head of the Montana Republican Party, Susan Giese. We had Republicans, we had Democrats, we had independents. This is a campaign, this is a movement of Montanans across the political spectrum who believe that we deserve better than the government that we're getting, who believe that there is more that we agree on, and there's more that unites us than divides us, and there is a hunger for this. And right now, yeah, we're behind the Republican, we're ahead of the Democrat. We take 5 points from the Democrat, we take 5 points from the Republican, we're in the lead. There is absolutely a path to win this, but we're not going to do it by worrying about splitting votes. We're going to do it by building a coalition of people across parties who are demanding that we have more options and demanding that we have a different approach in Washington.
Are there gonna be any debates?
I hope so. I wouldn't know yet. Yes. I'm sorry we didn't have beer for you, so you can ask me a tough question.
Simple request, really, just the beer. What percentage of Democrats do you think you will get to vote for you this fall? Do you think that you will get a majority of Democrats to vote for you this fall?
We're going to work to earn the support of every single Democrat that we can, and I think we will. But I'm not taking a single vote for granted from a Democrat or a Republican or an independent.
So if you think that you can win the majority of the Democratic vote in the general election, why didn't you run in the primary?
Because for 3 reasons. One, I'm an independent. It's authentic to who I am. It's how I worked. I swore an oath of allegiance to the United States of America, to our Constitution, not to a party. I worked at the University of Montana for the past 8 years. I worked very closely with Democratic governor, Democratic legislators. I worked very closely with the Republican governor, Republican legislators. We focused on the mission. We got stuff done. That is the spirit that we need right now. A toxic partisan warfare that all of us are being poisoned with. It's preventing us from getting things done. This is a campaign about bringing people together. That's why I'm running as an independent. Sure.
So why not take that message into the Democratic primary as a candidate and go through that vetting process? We're in a situation where we have rampant corruption. We have people at the highest level of government here in the state of Montana as well, who are committing open crimes worldwide. I mean, we're murdering people around the world. And so there is a party that is doing that. I mean, those are the real people. They are really doing it. So why not take this message into the Democratic primary?
I'm sending a message to both Democrats and Republicans that you can't overlook Montana national. So I'll say it, I'm not running against Montana Democrats, I'm not running against Montana Republicans. I'm running against a national system that has left Montana behind. I think it's time to walk into the proverbial temple and flip the table over. We spend more on interest on the debt than we do on defense.
Than we do on defense. A big, beautiful bill was a gift to the top 10% And it was partially paid by taking $1.1 trillion away from children, seniors, and poor people, SNAP benefits, Medicaid, ACA. They took all that money away from them and then gave it in all kinds of tax benefits to wealthy. Why did they do that? Because in our system, they're buying our elections. I admire you for doing what you're doing, because I don't think it can change with the Democratic Senate. There's no proof in that. So.
Thank you, sir. We need change. Thank you. Yes.
In terms of research and education, Canada and the EU are stealing the best minds as we speak. 180,000 of our best researchers and scientists have relocated with fast-track citizenship, payment of their expenses to move.
Yep.
We are in big trouble.
Yeah. Again, and I'll finish here. I guess I would just, if you think things are going well right now, I'm not your guy. I will tell you, I will work just as hard for you as I will for my most ardent supporters. But if you think that the direction of this country is wrong, if you think we are not doing right by our kids and our grandkids, if you think like I do, well then I would ask you to try a different approach and support our campaign. I want to close just with one last thank you and one last request, and I just want to say thank you again for being here. Thank you for engaging in this process. Thank you for a really rich and important dialogue. I really appreciate each and every one of you being here tonight and engaging in this process. And I want to ask if you like what you heard, if you think that we deserve a different way, I would be honored to earn your vote. I'd be honored to have your financial support for this campaign to help us build the grassroots movement we need to show Washington that Montanans demand better. So I'm going to humbly ask for your financial support. We have envelopes. If you can't support financially, and even if you can support financially, I'm going to ask each and every one of you, if you like what you heard here tonight. Now, if you didn't like what you heard, you don't have to say anything. But if you did like what you heard, go and tell 10 of your friends. You know, say, hey, maybe you've been a Republican your whole life. You can vote for an independent. Right? Maybe you've been a Democrat your whole life. You can vote for an independent. We win this campaign person by person. We take power back from the outside dark moneyed interests, neighbor by neighbor. Help us build this movement. That's my request of you. Thank you, everybody, for being here tonight. I'll stick around and ask more questions, but thank you.